There are lots of questions about the budget that we're going to have to put together to get ready for the next school year, 2011 and 2012. And as we prepare for our budget here in Carteret County's public schools, we have to think about three buckets of revenue, three sources for money to take care of what needs to be done in the classroom. And I want to walk you through where we stand, what we're looking at, and focus in particular on the state source of income. So think of three buckets. We get money from the federal government. That's one bucket of money. We then get money from our county. That's a second bucket of money. And the third bucket of money is the state bucket, and that's the biggest one. In North Carolina, we are faced with, around the state, a real financial problem. North Carolina is looking at a budget shortfall of approximately $3.5 billion for the next fiscal year. And that includes our school year, 2011-2012. And the reason for that is federal stabilization monies are going away. And another problem is that taxes that had been levied to increase revenues to get us through the last couple of years are sunsetting. Plus, there are some non-recurring cuts that will end. And the economic recovery is the fourth item. It's been very, very slow to bring us back to where we were. And the state relies on personal income tax and also sales tax. So if people aren't working, they're surely not spending any money. So that's a double whammy there. Public school budgets have been cut for 3 consecutive years. We know that very well here in Carteret County's public schools. And when you think about the state expenditures, about 40% of their budget goes toward public education. So when they have to cut in Raleigh, they look to the biggest place for that, and if 40% is public education, that's where they'll be looking. State funds approximately equal $7.2 billion for our public schools. So think about that. $7.2 billion go to the public schools around the state. And the LEAs, that's our school system and others like us, rely on that for about 65% of their budget, and 25% from the county, and about 10% from federal sources, and another 1% from fines and forfeitures and things like that. In Carteret County, we're about 60% from the state funded. 59% of our budget comes from state revenues, and 27.6% comes from the county. And here in Carteret County, 11% comes from the federal government. Since 1969, when the state was providing about 52% of its general fund, that's more than half of the money that came to the state for public instruction, K to 12, we've seen that dip over the years from 1969, 1970, all the way to the present. It's down to 35% of their general fund. Now think about that. That's about a 15% decrease in the money that they use for public instruction from their general fund. And that's been a gradual decline, but eventually from 50 to 35. You say, well, how does North Carolina stack up with the other states in terms of investing in public education? North Carolina ranks 45th in the nation in per pupil spending. That information comes to us from experts at North Carolina's Justice Center's Education and Law Project. They released this report that said that North Carolina's public school system faces further cuts in an already bare bones funding scheme. And according to the most recent U.S. Census data, they've found in their study that North Carolina ranks 45th in the nation in per pupil spending and 43rd in the nation in per pupil expenditure. And I'm quoting from this report, and it says that North Carolina ranks behind those states that I've mentioned, South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, and Kentucky. And Education Week, a very important publication on education, says that North Carolina ranked 46th in terms of funding adequacy and equity, and Education Week gave the state a D+, the lowest grade any state received for that adequacy and equity. The Education Law Center rated state public school funding based on funding level, distribution, and effort, the amount of spending compared to state per capita gross domestic product, and the number of school-aged children attending the state's public schools. North Carolina, and this is sad, North Carolina was one of only 4 states to receive below average ratings on all 4 indicators, including a D for funding distribution and an F for effort. So they need to be able to do more for public education in Raleigh. And why are schools on the chopping block? As I said before, they're the biggest chunk of the general fund, more than about 40%.